Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we will be going through both the patch notes, which I have not seen yet, and we'll be going through 11 new decks to try out tomorrow. I wanted to get this out as soon as possible so that, you know, as many people could see these different ideas as they could. I am spoiling all of my secrets, and some of them are pretty fun. But first, the patch notes. I don't know what's in here. Obviously, there'll be some talk about the expansion, which we can see here at the top. The new region Shurima. You can see new cards, new keyword. Yeah. Card updates. Well, I can see Aphelios. I have not seen it yet, but I can see Aphelios. Aphelios level 1 goes from 3 to 2 health, and Aphelios level 2 goes from 4 to 3 health. Is there anything else? No. Just gonna quickly check. It seems not. Let me just make sure, but I'm fairly sure that means there isn't. It doesn't look like it. So we've got an Aphelios nerf, but nothing on Twisted Fate. Okay. I mean, Aphelios did need a nerf. Don't get me wrong. Aphelios did need a nerf. Aphelios was too good. And now as a 3-mana 3-2, that is much worse. Don't get that wrong. A 3-mana going from a 3-mana 3-3 to a 3-mana 3-2, it dies to a lot more stuff. It's a lot more vulnerable. You might need extra protection for Aphelios all of a sudden. You know, different challengers can now, you know, pick off Aphelios. Even something as small as like Fleet Feather Tracker can pick off Aphelios, right? So they're definitely, you know, decreasing a health, you know, aside from upping a mana cost, that's like the second biggest nerf you can normally get. It's interesting they didn't choose to, you know, change any of the weapons. Definitely interesting, but I can understand we're getting a bunch of new cards. Let's not overreact, right? So Aphelios gets nerfed. Personally, I'm glad about that. Twisted Fate, I believe Twisted Fate should have been nerfed. Definitely something in Twisted Fate's package should have been nerfed, I think. You know, something to stop either, you know, drawing so much, maybe stress testing or something like that could have been nerfed potentially, right? But it seems that is not the case. And so well, let's just quickly go through the rest of the patch notes. I'll link it in the description for you as well. So we've got region road updates, of course. Champion Mastery is coming into the game. You can learn about that there. We've got, oh, this is a nice looking board, isn't it? New pet Fen. Oh, card backs. This one looks really cool. There's Renekton. That one's pretty. Wow, these are all. Okay, these card backs are sick. I will say that they are actually really cool. New emotes, of course. It's like I like this one already. Is probably my favorite one. Even though we can't see the actual animation of it, that one looks really funny. And deck bundles, ranked rewards, of course, and that seems to be kind of it. Some bug fixes, stuff like that. Okay, yeah, that's this part of the video done. Okay, so now we're gonna go on to 11 new decks I have created for you all to see. So I'm over here now because of just the way the out of cards, which is what I'm using, does it. But let's go through these 11 decks. What I'll say is these 11 decks, some are kind of more obvious ones and my take on sort of things that a lot of people have suggested. Some are a bit more out there, and there's at least one for every single new champion that has come out. So, you know, if you're looking forward to playing that new champion, I have at least one deck for you to try out. And obviously some are included in multiple, some, you know, are together, some etc. etc. So let's go through these decks. This first one here is the Mono Shurima Sundisk, right? So probably the deck that I'll play first. This is my, you know, very quick. We're only an hour after the patch notes have just come out. So we're only an hour after Azir has been revealed. So, you know, there will be things that I've missed in this. This is for all decks as well. There will be things I've missed, you know, because sometimes you just miss things. There will be cards that you're like, why haven't you played that? And it's probably just like more of, oh yeah, I forgot about that card, rather than, you know, it's wrong or whatever, right? And of course, this is all theory. Some of these cards won't be as good as we expect. Some cards will be way better than we expect. So, you know, these are never going to be right? No one's going to get the perfect card, 40 cards before we've played with them. But this is my list for the Sundisk deck. Let me just, it goes up or down. There we go. Ancient Preparations is our first card. And so with any Allegiance deck, and sort of this one is included as well, there is this kind of just like play the good cards kind of in there. And so, you know, quite a few of these cards are sort of just play the good cards. Of course, we are built around Buried Sun Disc, which is the 1-mana landmark, which is draw 1 of me if all your cards are Shurima. So, you know, you draw it for free, essentially. You play it on turn 1, and then it counts down 25, and then you restore the Sun Disc, which when it's restored, levels up all of your level 2 Ascendeds into level 3s. Now, we are only playing Renekton and Azir. We aren't playing Nasus, because I don't think we really need Nasus, to be honest. I think these two are better champions that fit the deck better, that will help us get there. And also, you know, might level up easier in this kind of deck as well. Especially Azir. So then, essentially, we are playing a lot of the good cards. Obviously, we're trying to get, like, Azir and Renekton leveled up. So we have included cards that, you know, help them level up, whether that's the Emperor Deus, the landmark, you know, that's going to summon Sand Soldiers for us, whether it's Exhaust for something like Renekton, you know, again, we're playing, like, the good cards, right? We're playing a lot of good cards. We're also playing the Allegiance card, and the idea of this deck is to either level up the Buried Sun Disc, which will be great. Remember, if your opponent tries to remove this at any point, you got this card for free and it costs 1 mana. Now, there's no removal of landmarks that costs 1 mana. So they've paid more mana and a card, so you're already up, right? You're way above them already. That's giving you that slight edge already. And, you know, you have a deck that is overall pretty good. It's just kind of a lot of solid cards. You know, we have stuff like Rite of Negation. Ruin Runner, of course, is a very good card. Inspiring Marshal is a nice, you know, we've got some nice endgame here. On turn 5, Renekton can be a threat. Golden Ambassador drawing Renekton is, of course, very, very strong. We get the 6/6 that can become as an 8/7, which is, of course, very good for us. We just have a lot of, you know, the better cards, and Esteemed Hierophant, of course, as well, to help the Sun Disc. Because we, you know, I do want to get that. Preservarium is just a great card as well. So essentially, we just have a lot of these good cards, you know, that they're just solid cards that we can play with. And feel pretty good about, and this is definitely going to be a deck I'm going to be trying first, and I really hope that we can, you know, get the Sun Disc leveled up, because that will be, of course, a lot of fun. Next up, we have a deck that I have called Enter Sandman, and you might be thinking, what is going on here? Well, for those of you who know me well, I love a bit of burn, and one of my favorite cards in the entire game is this one, Phantom Prankster. Now, I know a lot of people they're gonna build Azir Hecarim, and it might be better than this. It very well might be, but for me, I'm all in on this. I love Phantom Prankster, and I made my what did I call it? Pesky aggro, right? And it was when Pesky Spectre came out, and it was this kind of thing with Phantom Prankster and this kind of early Shadow Isles aggression type list. And essentially, you know, it's going all in for aggro. I have included Azir. Initially, of course, it didn't have Azir when I first built it because he hadn't come out yet. But having seen him, I think he can fit in the deck very well. And I love this kind of deck. I absolutely adore this kind of deck. It's an aggressive Shadow Isles list with Bark Beast, Doomkeepers, Stygian Onlookers, Curse Keepers, the landmark, of course, that's going to summon more Sand Soldiers for us. So leveling up Azir shouldn't be that hard for us because we have a lot of different cheap units to summon, and also, of course, Shark Chariots as well, with Blighted Caretakers as well. Doom Beast and Ruinous Path are going to help us, you know, sort of finish the game off with Prankster as well. And then Inspiring Marshal at the top, because the idea is we summon a bunch of allies and just, you know, hit them in the face for a lot of damage. And that's the idea of this deck. And if our things die, well, then that's when Prankster comes into it and picks them off as well. That's kind of the whole plan. And I absolutely love it, by the way. I think it's a really cool idea and effect. And I can't wait to play with this deck. This is exactly the kind of deck that I love. You definitely can go slow with this, as I say, and go with Hecarim. I thought that was more obvious, so, you know, I kind of didn't want to go obvious with every one of these, you know, decks. I didn't want to just show you, like, a deck for each champion that every single person has thought of. So not everyone is going to be like that, but I do think that this will be a lot of fun. And if you are like me and enjoy playing cards like Phantom Prankster a lot, then this could be the deck for you, because it's certainly I think will be a lot of fun, and summoning a bunch of Shark Chariots and a bunch of the Sand Soldiers and just going wide, smacking your opponent in the face. You know, Sand Soldier hits them in the face, that deals 2 to them. The Prankster deals the extra 1 to them. You know, you just burn them down and they're dead before they know what hit them, and it's just a lot of fun. So yeah, really looking forward to playing this deck in particular. Next up, we have a deck called Draw Everything, and this one, I know people will love this deck. People will love this idea. This one is a Taliyah deck. And Taliyah, you know, most people have kind of, I think, struggled a bit to figure out exactly what region Taliyah should combo with, where the best place to play her is with. Well, this one is Draw Everything, because we are combining it with Hexcore Foundry and Mushrooms. We're going to copy that extra Foundry, we're going to draw as many cards as we want, and we're going to mushroom them to death, and I cannot wait to do it. It's going to be so much fun. This whole deck to me looks like an absolute dream to play. What's the idea? Well, we of course got a bunch of Shurima landmarks, right? Like Ancient Preparations, we've got Preservarium, which is even more card draw. We've got Foundry, we've got, where is it? Ancient Hourglass will give us another landmark as well. So we have plenty of landmarks to use and to try and, you know, level up Taliyah. We also have Desert Naturalist, which can either destroy landmarks or give us a nice little 5/4. And the point is, we overload their deck with mushrooms. They, you know, we don't mind having Hexcore Foundries because our curve is very low, and we have a bunch of discard in there as well with Zonite Urchin, Rummage. You know, we've got plenty of discard. Get excited as well, and we should have the cards to discard because we're just going to be throwing mushrooms at them. They're going to keep drawing cards, and that's how we're going to win the game. Of course, Taliyah, when leveled up as well, has this really cool effect on her level up where she's going to be dealing essentially burn damage to their face. You know, she deals 2 damage to a unit, and then if it dies, then she's going to do some damage to face, and you know, if you can get that, then that's just going to help us close out the game as well. And so Taliyah kind of acts as our finisher alongside the mushrooms, and I think this will be a lot of fun to play because we're just going to cycle through our entire deck, you know, and then so are they. We're going to make them cycle through our entire deck as well, and but we're going to win because they've got, you know, a bunch of mushrooms into the deck. And I think that there probably will be better ways to play Taliyah, don't get me wrong. Like, Veiled Temple seems like a really good thing to copy. And there aren't too many other ones, like, outside of Shurima that are, like, I think very obvious to copy. But this one, I think, will be the most fun, no doubt. And so that's why I kind of wanted to show you it, because I think it could be good. I actually think this deck has a chance to be pretty decent depending on where the meta goes. Okay, up next is kind of a deck that, you know, most people have kind of figured out will probably be pretty good, and I'm going to show you both the Freljord version and the Noxus version as well, and that is a Shurima Overwhelm type deck with Renekton. So this one is the Freljord version. It's essentially, you know, it is just a good overwhelmed deck. That's pretty much all I can say about it, really. You know, you play, you know, some buffs early on, Omenhawk. You also have Xenotype to potentially, you know, just get an absolute crazy buff off as well. And then you just play, you know, a bunch of the overwhelmed cards, starting on 4 with Renekton. You have Ruin Runner, which is of course an insane card. You have Alpha Wildclaw, Sejuani, Ancient Yeti, and Battle Fury. There are some interesting little synergies as well. Like Inner Sanctum, you might look at as a card and be like, why do you want Inner Sanctum? Well, it's because if we hit Inner Sanctum on 3 and then have Renekton and or Ancient Yeti, of course, because when Ancient Yeti starts in your hand, he becomes a 4-drop, so that's important as well. If you can get Inner Sanctum and 2 extra keywords on those units, whether it be Challenger, Spell Shield, anything, right? Extra health is always nice as well. If you get anything like that, you know, you're just loving life, right? You've just got this big meaty overwhelm that can potentially just do a bunch of damage to your opponent, and I think that will be really, really, really quite strong. And so this deck I expect to be pretty good. We've seen this kind of thing be good already. Whether it's any better than like Freljord Noxus will be interesting, but let's quickly go on over to the Noxus side to just see what I've done there as well. So here is the Noxus one. This is less refined. This is one that I did quite a while ago, so don't pay too much attention to the exact cards that are in there, but the idea is much the same, right? You're playing a pretty aggressive deck, this time with Darius as your other champion other than Renekton, and you're essentially trying to just smack them in the face, and do basically the same thing. Which one will be better will be an interesting discussion point. If I had to guess, Freljord will be slightly better, but that very well could be wrong. And this again looks like a fairly solid deck that if you enjoy Nasus, you can go in for. Okay, so on to another deck that, most people have kind of suggested could be pretty good, and this is my version of it. I know, obviously, Kindred Nasus is meant to go together, right, with the whole slay mechanic, and I've heard some people say that they wouldn't play Undying in it. To me, it seems like Undying is just such a good target to slay every turn that it's like, why not? To me, it seems very obvious. And so what we have here is essentially an Undying deck with, a bunch of slay mechanics and a bunch of, just ways of killing units. Either our units are units we don't mind killing, like Half Aristocrat, or Curse Keeper. I was trying to find it. I was like, did I have a Keeper in this deck? Or Curse Keeper, or the Undying, of course, being the most obvious version. Or they're cards that kill it, like Spirit Leech, which I think will be pretty nice. Obviously, Blight Caretaker into Keeper is just crazy. We have stuff like Ruthless Predator, which obviously goes very well with Undying as well, because we can just use it to kill Undying and something else. Butcher as well, of course, pretty good. But what this deck now has that perhaps it was missing before, because the Undying was a bit too slow. I think it was just a bit too slow to really make that much sense. But now, because of Kindred, we can go much slower, because this is like, Kindred is like the quintessential great mid-range card, right? Kindred sits there on the board and essentially just gives you better board presence, and that's it. And if your deck is built around that whole idea, then Kindred will just slowly win you the game, like every good mid-range deck wants to do, right? It's just going to slowly outvalue your opponent, and then you're going to get to a point where you've won the game. We also have 2 Nasus in here. I don't think 3 would be correct. I like having 2 Nasus in here, because Nasus essentially is just a big body stick. It's very likely by turn 6 we'll get Nasus to 7/7, maybe even 8/8, right? And a 6-mana 8/8 with Fearsome is pretty good. Don't get me wrong. And essentially the idea is, eventually you can just start atrocitying things, whether that's the Undying, a big Undying that's maybe like a 6/6, 7/7, right? Whether that's Kindred, who of course when they level up, they will become, bigger and bigger, because they grow for each time they kill a unit with a mark. So potentially it could be Kindred as well. Nasus, of course, is just going to be a massive body, and we also have 1 Commander Ledros in there as well, to just, use Atrocity on anyway, because everyone knows that's a good combo already. So there's plenty of different ways for us to win this game, whether it's just, beating them down with Undying, whether it's Kindred just taking over, whether it's, Nasus just hitting them for, 13, 14, whether it's just Atrocity, off Ledros, whether it's just Ledros alone, right? There's plenty of different ways we can win the game, which I think is really important. Also, we could just, hit Keeper into Caretaker and just run them down. It can happen like that as well, and it's not unlikely. So that's kind of where we are, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with this kind of deck. Of course, there are always things that will probably change. As I say, I probably have forgotten something in this deck. But I expect it to be very solid and a lot of fun to play as well. So for those of you who just watched my Azir reveal video, you'll know that I mentioned, wait, is there a Misfortune deck in this? And I think I found it. And I was like, before today, I was like, okay, well, I have to build an Azir deck. So what am I going to do? I had to wait for the card to come out, of course, before I could do it. But then I just got obsessed with this idea of Misfortune. We've already seen like what I call Enter Sandman, which is a different deck and is more similar to the sort of Hecarim one. This is a different way. Now we're going to Bilgewater instead, which might not have been the first thing that people thought of, right? But I think this could be actually pretty scary, because as I started putting the list together, it was like I needed to get rid of like 12 cards. There was enough cards for me to where I was like, I need to take away a bunch of cards, which is always a good sign, right? If you've got way too many cards and you're like really struggling to cut it down, that I think is a pretty good sign. So what are we doing? You might see 3 Warning Shot and be like, why is that in the deck? We'll get to that later. We have Ancient Preparations, which is just a very good card for Predict, because something like, you know, the Emperor Deus card here, the Landmark, can be just really important to get. Similar for Misfortune, right? Finding Misfortune on 3 can be really good to get. This is just a good card. It also gives us a unit on turn 3 as well, which coming down with Misfortune, again, very useful for us, right? So just a very solid card that goes in the deck. Obviously, then we've got our kind of generic aggro type cards like Crack Corsair. Doomkeeper is, of course, a pretty insane card in its own right. We can afford to put in Shapestone because we have Ancient Preparations. We also have, of course, the Emperor Deus, which gives us 5, which, you know, should be enough to get Shapestone hopefully down. Now, you might see something like Dreadweight Deckhand and be like, well, what is this doing in the deck? Well, obviously, it synergizes pretty well with the Misfortune. We're also running Make It Rain, and it has Warning Shot, and it summons 2 units. That's important as well, of course, for Azir's level up. So there are plenty of targets for the Powder Keg to use. I think people also underrate, like, when people go in to kill a keg and it actually saves you life. Like, if they attack it with something with 3 attack that you otherwise weren't going to block, like, you've essentially just gained 3 life. You know, if this was a 2-mana heal your Nexus 3, like, that's like a Tavern Keeper, but better, right? So it's like, you know, that's a card that would see play. So even when you lose the keg that way, it's not even the end of the world unless it's a 1-attack unit, really. Then we have Jagged Taskmaster, and of course, this is another great reason to be in Bilgewater, because the little sand soldiers are all 1-drops, and so this will increase their attack to 2 straight away. That's already done for you. You don't need to play. I mean, you could go in more for sort of the 4-drop, you know, card that gives them all extra attack as well. I'll probably make that deck also. But I don't think we need it. And I think Taskmaster, again, with Warning Shot, feels pretty good, right? Doomkeeper will become even crazier. And it all feels pretty nice. Then, of course, we have Azir, which will, again, summon more Sand Soldiers for us. Goes well with Jagged Taskmaster again. We've got Make It Rain, obviously a good removal target. Again, triggers Plunder, good for the Dreadweight Deckhand as well. We have Misfortune, which is, of course, it's what the deck is sort of built for. But then even at the top end, we have some really cool ways to finish the game. We've got Petty Officer, Island Navigator, again, just summoning multiple units, really good. Ruin Runner, of course, just a good, like, finishing card, I suppose. And Citrus Courier allows us to rally, and, you know, hopefully will also be closing out the game for us. I think this looks like a pretty solid list. Of course, there will be things, again, that I will change. But to me, this looks like a lot of fun, and actually something that could be pretty good. And so if you want to take Azir away from Ephemerals, if Ephemerals isn't really your thing, maybe this is the deck for you, because I think it could be also a lot of fun. Okay, so one of my favorite cards that came out was Concurrent Timelines. I'm sure many people fell under the same spell, but this card is super interesting. 1 mana slow speed for the rest of the game. The first time you play a follower each round, pick 1 of 3 followers at the same cost to transform it into. Now, of course, it is only once per round, and I know a lot of different people were thinking, well, I know Swim talked about the sort of Ledros Dreadway combo, and you know, it wins the game for you on the spot, which is a really cool way of building it. And so I thought, okay, most people are probably going to go into Shadow Isles because it has some good other tools. So what else can we do, right? And then again, this was, I think someone mentioned it on Swim stream, that Concurrent Timelines, like, the way it works is if you have a unit and it gains, like, as it comes down, if it gains a stat or a keyword, when it transforms, it keeps it, which is really weird. And it was like, oh, okay, so now we can actually sort of, instead of just thinking like, oh, what good play effects do we have? Because it's important with this card to note as well. Play and summon effects work for the first unit, but not the unit you transform into. So ideally, you would have a deck full of cards where the unit comes down, has an effect, and then you transform it into essentially the biggest vanilla thing you can find, because then you just want the stats. And so that's kind of what we're doing here, but keeping that first point in mind about keeping stats and whatnot, this is the deck that I've come up with, and it's Daybreak decks, because of course, like, Slurry Soldier here will give you a 1/1 that has 1/1 extra stats. That's nice. That's nice. And what's important as well, Slurry Soldier is a good card on its own. So if we don't draw Concurrent Timelines, we still have a good card. But if we do draw it, then we have this 1-drop that now has extra stats. Also good. Now, Concurrent doesn't change champions, so that's why we've included Zoe as well. because we're going to be playing quite a few different cards, and Zoe is just kind of pretty decent. Anyway, we've got some, again, just some of the good cards, Guiding Touch, Mystic Shot. But then, again, we're going in more for this Daybreak type idea of, you know, whatever 2-drop we get now has 4 extra health all of a sudden. Like, what if it's Boxtopus? We just got a 3/8 Challenger. Like, no joke. That is what we will get if we get Boxtopus with Solari Shieldbearer. Insane. Giddy Sparkeologist, obviously another card, and another reason why we have Zoe in the deck, of course, is because we can get that Celestial card. Giddy can give something Spell Shield and 1/1, and then transform into something much bigger than it. You know, it can transform into Loyal Badger Bear. And all of a sudden we've got this, like, if this was a 3/4 with this ability, it would be insane. But that's what we're trying to go for here. Same for Solari Priestess. It's going to give us that card, and then we're going to get something with a better stat line than a 1/2, right? Chumwump is going to give us 2 cards. And then, you know, we're going to turn it into something better than what it is currently. Good target for our Rummage, of course, as well. Leona, again, champions aren't affected, but because we are playing the Daybreak cards, and Daybreak will activate on these cards, you know, she's just going to be a nice defensive option for us, you know, and potentially could win the game as well for us later down the line. The Fangs, again, going to give us that card, and then hopefully a better body than a 3/2. Losing the lifesteal isn't ideal, but still pretty nice overall. Star Shaping can help us win. Submersible is a really interesting one because it's going to draw the card, and whatever 5-drop we get is going to have 4 more attack, which is really cool. And finally, my favorite one, Sun Guardian, is going to give something 4/4. It's going to give something 4/4, and if we've got Leona like leveled up, it's going to stun something as well. We're going to end up with a 6-drop that's got 4/4 extra stats. That means we could get an 11/10 Alpha Wildclaw. That's good. So this is a deck as well that I'm really excited to play. I think Concurrent is a super interesting card, and I cannot wait to play this. And what I like about this deck is we're still playing a lot of good cards anyway. You know, we haven't sacrificed, you know, our entire deck to play a bunch of bad cards if we don't draw Concurrent Timelines. No, we've still got a deck here. There's still a lot of different ways we can win the game. You know, we could level up Zoe and give everything Elusive or Overwhelm. You know, we could do a lot of different things. We could just, you know, win sort of from some Celestials and Daybreak, you know, keeping us alive, and then just win through like Star Shaping or, you know, a bunch of Celestials. So we still have other ways of winning the game as well, which I think is really important, and makes me pretty excited to play this kind of deck. On to Jarvan's deck, and this is their full Damacian Allegiance Elite deck, right? This kind of looks similar to a lot of Elite decks in the past, but we are obviously playing some of the new cards, like Penitent Squire is just insane. Tattered Banner, by the way, just for those of you who don't know, is a 1-mana burst speed spell that the next ally you summon, grant it Challenger. Not give, grant it Challenger. So Penitent Squire, you know, very good card. And of course we're playing a bunch of elites, so it will, yeah, this, unless we have a hand full of spells, will always go off. It would be very rare that it didn't. Battlesmith, of course, doing the Lord's work. Speaking of Lords, we've got Honored Lord, which is a new card as well. We also have Gallant Rider as well. We are in the Allegiance for Bannerman as well, of course. Just going for it. We have got Plaza in there because a lot of the, you know, cards like Gallant Rider and Honored Lord, you know, benefit from Plaza. It's still pretty good. Getting the Challenger, we have, you know, with Battlesmith, hopefully, you know, quite big units, which is quite nice as well. As I mentioned, Bannerman. Garen, of course, goes really well with Penitent Squire and Grand Plaza, so that's always nice. We have 1 Cithria and 2 Jarvan. I think I like this kind of, you know, sort of duality. Sometimes we want to just close out the game with Cithria. Sometimes we might need to remove something with Jarvan, right? So it's a bit of a mix. That's why I haven't gone 3 Jarvan. I've gone kind of, we only probably need 6 3-drops. We only probably need 3 6-drops. So, you know, sometimes Cithria will help us win the game. Sometimes Jarvan will help us, you know, get control back off the board. 1 for the Fallen, which can be very useful in certain matchups. And I always liked in Elite decks having Harrowing as your splash. Just because I think, you know, particularly with something like Cithria or Garen or any of the bigger units, really, even something like Gallant Rider, right? Like, it's just nice to be able to win the game, you know, off a Harrowing. Even defensively, sometimes it can be okay because you will get, like, you know, Penitent Squire will potentially get you a Tattered Banner. You could potentially get the 4 Demacia in hand. You can create some cards as well. which can be quite nice also. So that's the deck. A more standard deck, I think, but you know, if you love Demacia, and I'm sure there are some of you out there, then you know, I think that'll be a really fun way to play with elites. Okay, so I'm sure you're all wondering where I've put Sivir. I think it's Sivir. I'm still a bit undecided. Sivir sounds cooler, but Sivir I think perhaps is more correct. But I've, as you can see, put it with Taric, another champion I actually got wrong at first with their name. And this is the deck. And Sivir I think is very flexible. There's a absolute bunch of decks that you could play Sivir in. Don't get me wrong, she fits in a lot of different directions, and I would not be shocked if there are many different good Sivir decks. One will probably come out on top, but there could be very many, don't get me wrong. But what we're playing here is with Taric, because of course Sivir is a champion that if you can get, you know, more sort of buffs onto, the better, right? Quick attack, spell shield, all looks very good, and this allows us to play Inner Sanctum very, very happily, because our two champions on turn 4, if you can get Inner Sanctum and then drop one of these on turn 4, god, any keywords are feeling really good. Also, if it is Taric in this instance, will, you know, help level Taric up as well, so that feels really quite good. And we have a bunch of just good targets to put you know, a bunch of extra stats or keywords on, whether it's Ruin Runner, whether it's Sparklefly, whether it's our champions. You know, this is kind of that perfect Taric deck where, you know, we've just got a bunch of good units to like help buff up. It's exactly what Taric wanted. And it might not be the best way to play Sivir, as I mentioned, but for Taric, it really might be his best deck. Something like this really, really could be his best deck. We have, you know, ways to protect our units as well with Ancient Hourglass, you know. Oh, they've gone in to remove our Taric when it doesn't have, you know, what would you call that? Invincibility, I guess. It doesn't really have a keyword, does it? Oh, well, I'm just going to, you know, use Ancient Hourglass. Oh, no, in 2 turns, I'm coming back, and, you know, you're going to have to deal with it again, right? A lot of fun. I think this will be a lot of fun for those of you who enjoy playing Taric as well. I think it could be likely one of, if not his best deck. There are other things you can do with him. There is the Golden Aegis card, which can create a rally and double rally, which could be really fun as well. I'll definitely be playing around with that in the near future, I suspect, as well. This is another deck that I'm perhaps the most hyped for, because I think it's one that people, again, probably didn't think of straight away. You know, it's probably a more unique take. I think a lot of people have thought of pairing Lissandra with Shadow Isles, which, don't get me wrong, again, probably will end up being the best way to play Lissandra. But I thought, well, let's try it with Swain. Let's see how good this deck looks. And again, I kind of like the direction this is going. This to me feels like a deck that could very well be pretty good. And why is that? What makes this a good combo? Well, of course, Lissandra, to level up, she needs you to play allies that cost 8 or more. Well, Swain has access to 2 of the best 8-drops in the game. You know, we aren't reliant on these Frozen Thralls anymore, because we have the likes of Captain Farron and, of course, the Leviathan, which are very good cards in their own right. So we aren't reliant on, you know, these Frozen Thralls and, like, getting the Draklorn Inquisitor just at the right time and summoning all that. Will that work? You know, I feel like a lot of the other Lissandra decks are kind of, like, hoping that they can get Lissandra leveled up through Draklorn Inquisitor, and if they can't, they might struggle. Whereas this, we're fine, you know, we can wait. Don't worry about it. We're fine. You know, and we can even use stuff like Wolf Rider. This is one that I'm really excited for because of Ice Shard and even Blighted Ravine. We've got Death Sand in here as well. We have, because Blighted Ravine is deal 2 to everything, including your enemy's Nexus. It means that we can reliably get Wolf Rider off, which is a really big deal because now we can reach turn 8 much quicker than them, which is great. And this is kind of what Wolf Rider had been lacking. I think Ice Shard might make Wolf Rider a lot better because it makes it so much more reliable, right? You can always wait. You can have the 3 spell mana, play Ice Shard, play Wolf Rider because it's in Freljord, which there wasn't really this to do yet before this new expansion. So I think that that's a really cool synergy. And Blighted Ravine as well. Like if you got Wolf Rider in hand and you pick up Blighted Ravine, well, you know, well, I'll play Blighted Ravine this turn. And the next turn I'll play Wolf Rider. It's a perfect little synergy, right? And Swain will level up in this deck insanely quickly. like insanely quickly. Between Avalanche, Ice Shard, Blighted Ravine, Death's Hand, Flock, there's no way Swain isn't leveling up in this deck. And that means that, we can afford to just put in this little Lissandra package with the Frozen Thralls, and kind of create like we're going to win the game if you're not careful, like if you don't have an answer for this, watch out. And this is really, really important because I feel like Swain Freljord has kind of struggled in the past against, anything that could sort of control it out. But because now we have Lissandra potentially to level up and create as a Watcher in hand, and they're going to have to deal with these Frozen Thralls, like, we can go very, very, very late. Like, any control deck is going to struggle because our deck now can go really late. It can beat aggro with stuff like Ice Shard and Avalanche. That should be no issue. It can beat mid-range by simply, sort of, again, outvaluing it, potentially even getting Frozen Thrall into Dracula and Inquisitor. It's probably one of the worst matchups. And then we can just go in for an absolutely massive late game as well, in the form of the Watcher and or, Frozen Thralls coming out and or just Swain Leviathan being good. Like, it's all there. This deck feels to me like a deck that has a lot of different ways of winning against different decks. That could very much be quite good. And I don't think I've heard anyone else talking about this deck. And to me, it seems like, hey, that looks okay. And again, there's probably slight changes that I will make once, I start playing with it. But to me, it looks like a really solid deck to play Lissandra in. And, maybe it ends up being Lissandra's best deck, right? And lastly, but not least, well, maybe least, we have LeBlanc. LeBlanc's deck. What have I decided to do? I know a lot of people have been talking about maybe Ash, Ash Noxus. Yeah, that seems like a cool type deck. Well, I've gone back to one of my favorite decks, which is Harrowing with Noxus, or Darrowing, the old Darrowing decks as they used to be known. And this is my attempt at it. And what is this? Well, we've kind of taken the Darrowing list, but maybe just slowed it down a bit. And given ourselves more access to drawing cards, more access to a kind of more combo type build rather than a sort of aggressive build. And it's actually a direction that I kind of like. So we do have still some, early nice options, Blade Squire and Legion's Outdoor. We still have access to the Reforged package, which we are using because stuff like Trifarian Glory Seeker kind of needs the Reforged package, if we're being honest, whether it's through Overwhelm or Quick Attack, of course. That is very nice. And the same is sort of true for LeBlanc, giving LeBlanc Overwhelm. Now LeBlanc is, an actual threat. We have 1 Riven and 2 Darius. In here, it very well could be that, the best way to play it is actually 2, 2, and 2. That would not shock me in the least. But, I wanted to showcase LeBlanc here, so we're putting LeBlanc in. And the idea is essentially that we've got a bunch of, we've got Glory Seeker, we've got LeBlanc, we've got Basilisk Rider here as well. We are going to get off Reputation, most likely. We've got Kato as well. We've got Assessor, right? We've got a bunch of 5+ attack allies. That isn't an issue. Reputation will go off. So stuff like Whispered Woods will become a 2-mana draw to, which is really, really nice. We also have stuff like Whirling Death, which helps us get Reputation off as well. So there's plenty of things that we can do here with our 5 attack units. And of course, things go wrong, right? Oh no, they controlled us out. They got us up. Well, we've still got the Harrowing. Harrowing is a big finisher, whether it's summoning Captain Ferron again, whether it's Darius. Of course, now summoning LeBlanc, like, there's a bunch of different things. And because with Harrowing as well, there's kind of a neat synergy where you just put LeBlanc at the end and she will level up. Like, this is a good way of leveling LeBlanc up, is to play Harrowing. And whilst LeBlanc will be ephemeral, if you can draw another LeBlanc, that will be leveled up for you guaranteed, which is really nice. It might even be possible. You'd probably kill your opponent. I can't imagine that you wouldn't. But it might even be possible to level up LeBlanc and then get the next 15 damage as well to get off the new the card. I can't remember what it's called. But this is LeBlanc's deck. It's my attempt at it. I think it looks okay. I think it looks okay because we don't mind if our stuff dies as much because we've got Harrowing. And that's where I think it matters, right? That's where I think LeBlanc makes a bit more sense. It doesn't matter if LeBlanc dies. Because we care about the Harrowing, and getting a 5/2, later on in the game, attacking on the Harrowing is really good. And so I think there is something here for definite. and it'll probably need some tinkering and whatnot, but I definitely think there is something here. And so, yeah, that was my last deck. That is deck number 11, I believe. Please let me know what you thought of these decks, which ones you're excited to play for. Of course, as soon as the cards are available on Mobalytics, I will link you Mobalytics links to them all. They'll all be in there in the description, so they'll, be a bunch of things. You can, potentially just pause the video and look at a list and create it yourself if you wish. But that is the list. We got an Aphelios nerf as well. I'll be back tomorrow, where I'll probably make at least 2 videos, potentially 3. Really excited for tomorrow. Can't wait to see all the things that people are playing. Of course, it's going to be so much fun. And so, yeah, I will see you tomorrow for the patch, Christmas Day, and let's have some fun. Have a really nice day, and I can't wait.